Hello, hello.
Curtis, welcome.
It's been 7 hours from what I see.
Yes. I
Wow.
started this around noon. In fact, that's how I
Wow.
started by starting this piece of artwork. And so
Uh,
I've been tinkering on it in between like breaks with
wow.
visits.
That looks great. Is that gouache or what are you using?
Yes. I started with some watercolor pencils and then have been layering on gouache since.
Nice.
And then so I've just moved, I'm really wishing I had some Payne's gray.
Uh-huh.
So I'm making do with a combo of generic gray and some Prussian blue. I was musing on how I've drawn this particular tiger in this particular pose like a few times now, like
Yeah.
with pencil. I've done it on the Cintiq back there, and then I'm doing
Okay.
it again now. So it's been like this theme of like certain images just need to circle back around a few times.
That's great. I know you're very cognizant of numerology, right? With the 55 and the 88, and we even talked about posting things sometimes, using numbers. So
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's because I'm terrible at math. So to me, math is like the numbers are just like the glyphs. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same thing with that's why I enjoy lettering and like typography because it's it's also why so many typos slip past me is because I see them as like the individual. I very quickly forget that they're words
Yeah.
and that they're supposed to be a certain way, and I just start seeing like the patterns that they make, um like a tiger's tail, like the T's and how the A's in the lowercase and like things like that, like the crossbars there, or the comics foo show, right? Like the way the letter, I start looking at how the letters fit in, all those O's and C shapes, and then the U shape, right? The C goes this way and the U goes that way.
No,
So
definitely. It's like was it I didn't know. I heard recently was it the number eight, non-infinity 108 symbolizes something, nothing, and everything, because it's one is something, zero is nothing, and eight when you turn it on its side is everything because it's the infinity. So that's why 108.
yes,
It's,
yes.
yeah. So we we talked about it before the campaign, and you've gone through the thick of it. We were talking about how everybody kind of has they'll give you the war stories, right? Okay, now it's going to start out with a bang, and then you're going to go for the long, kind of dull period where it's kind of, and then it's going to hype back. Are you seeing all those things, or is it what you expected? Is it not what you expected? What's that like?
Okay, so I can see it, but I feel like I'm also it's almost like paper dolls where I'm putting the third week slump, I'm putting that over the things that happened, so it's like how you define it, right? So the campaign is whatever I make it. So I can see like that's a valuable lesson. The other really key valuable lesson was getting swept up in those first 48 hours and feeling. Okay, so here's the thing. I had to do a presentation for a group I'm really proud to be a part of, right? It's called Kids Comics Unite. And I had a lot of people to check in with,
Mm-hmm.
but then they let me do a presentation where I was able to break down like my, the step-by-step process, what I did, how I got to Kickstarter, etc. And the one thing that really stuck with me was like when to ignore good advice. Because I
Ooh,
was getting
that's an
so much
interesting.
I was getting so much good advice, from everywhere. You actually were one of the folks who got to see the pre-launch page.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I remember you had some really good advice there, and there were a few other people who jumped in. A friend of mine who makes a living doing copywriting, so he was doing it from like the sell point, sell text, do it this way. And so I came up with this formula of can't, won't, will. I really wish I had a graphic that I could throw up. So can't, right? I couldn't do it because I didn't have the time or I didn't have the specific skill sets to like tools. I would end up spending too much time trying to figure out the tool that
sure.
was useful, right? So that was kind of like can't. So certain bits of advice were just based on can't.
Yeah.
And there were certain bits of advice that was like won't, like there was a part of like my intuition or my gut was like, no, I'm not gonna keep it to just 4
But it's funny when you say that. It's like today I had like like an epiphany, and it's one of those things where it's like you say it a lot. I say it aloud to myself, and then I go, "Gosh, that's obvious," and maybe everybody else knows this. But I had this realization today that when you say yes to something, you automatically are saying no to something else, and when you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. It's like that. It's like this cosmic law, right? It's like, yes, I can do this. That means no, I can't do that. And it's that kind of game, right? That kind of like you're talking about playing, right? It's like if you can't say yes to everybody because a yes to this strategy is a no to this one, and vice versa, and back and forth, right? So yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just like, what do you use as your compass in those circumstances, right?
yeah.
And so it's just like part of it was intuition, and some of that paid off, and part of it was really luck, where I was just like counting on certain things.
I think one thing that I liked that you did, and I don't know if it was something that, I mean, I'm imagining it was purposeful. You can let me know, but you started building up your audience way before the campaign. I mean, you had the newsletters and you were ramping up, and that's not something that I see every day. A lot of times I see people just kind of all of a sudden they just pop up on the scene as soon as the crowdfunding starts, and then they're trying to ramp up their following while they're trying to actually get backers. Was that one of those intuitive things? Was that a strategic thing? I'm just curious because I thought it was so interesting to watch how you pulled that together.
Yeah, no, that was definitely a playbook thing where I was literally like, if you're gonna do a thing, if you're gonna launch a book, here's a 6 month to do list.
Nice.
Do these things over the course of 6 months to prepare for that book launch. And so
Yeah. Well, I kind of look from the outside looking in. It's kind of like, and I don't know if you see it this way, but I definitely see this project and this campaign as like a culmination of everything and everybody that you've kind of cultivated relationships with, the skill set you've cultivated, and the knowledge for decades now. I mean, it's like everything kind of is like kind of came to a head, right? And I think that's why it's such a great project. Really excited about it. So I think it's great.
all 85 of us. It's just,
Plus three tomorrow or tonight.
yeah, well, okay, so we're like we've gone past Justice League and we're kind of in Legion of Superheroes
Yes.
territory, I
Yeah.
think. So,
Yeah. Definitely.
well, I don't know. I wouldn't want to insult you by saying you can be Karate Kid.
It's so funny. I used to work when I was a kid. I worked with Hank Canals, and he was one of the editors at Malibu Comics, and he went on to work at DC up until recently when they had their thing. He now works for Immortal Studios with Peter Shaw. Um, and one of his favorite characters, I always remember he loved Karate Kid. That was his favorite character. I thought that was so interesting. That was definitely, he always told me that was one of his favorite DC characters, and then he ended up working for DC. So go figure.
That's pretty awesome. That's a pretty iconic design. I remember like it from my own child. And in fact, I remember when I was young, I had a large collection of the 8-inch Mego superhero line.
Uh-huh.
I mean, a lot of doubles, a lot of broken pieces. I was kind of a little bit of a Frankenstein. I take them apart and put them together.
Sure.
And so one of them, I made a Karate Kid out of one of them
Nice.
using some like yellow electrical tape to get that collar, that nice Iron Fist super sharp collar. So
That's cool.
that was a fun one. So yeah, so iconic design, for its time, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's been updated a bunch of times. I wish we had the visuals like we do with the Comics Foo show, where it's just like blip.
Yeah.
For
Exactly.
example.
But no, this is great. Yeah. It's we were talking about in the Silverline show about iconic characters and why they last. And
Mhm.
in the past, I would always approach it from a creative sense. Oh, it's because of this design or this silhouette or this theme. But the realization actually came to me recently, and I didn't realize until I was saying it, was it's also the companies that stayed in business. I mean, that's the harsh reality, right? Is
Mhm.
the fact that you had John in accounting making sure that the bills were paid and this person in payroll kept the company open, and it got sold to Warner Brothers and so forth and so on. And that's actually one of the things that keeps characters alive is the business. And it's kind of not as romantic, right? But I think that's definitely overlooked, this because there's some great characters that are now in the public domain, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that brings to mind like the whole League of Extraordinary Gentlemen by Alan Moore, right? That whole opus of work based on public domain characters.
yeah,
Agents of Thunder, Thunder Agents, right? Isn't that another one
I think
that's
so. Yeah.
that's legendarily in the public domain?
Yeah, there was, when I was working at Malibu, we had this line called the Protectors, and it was like the Avengers team of all public domain characters that were kind of
Mhm.
like revamped into this team, and those characters are now being done by this guy named Barry Gregory. He has Barry Gregory has a line called Gallant Comics, and it's all these public domain characters that he's doing stuff on. And there's like a public domain Daredevil. I don't know if you ever seen that. It's like
With the boomerang, right?
boomerang, right? And he's like half, I think half blue, half red, something like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's like an old I remember seeing that. I remember that from my one of my first what comic book conventions seeing them. They're not timely. They must predate timely or something like that. But those are
yeah.
old school characters for sure.
Oh, totally, totally. Yeah, there's that, and there's even a public domain Blue Beetle. So he appears in certain comics, but people don't advertise him on the cover because they're afraid of uh, the company that shall not be named, taking umbrage with it. Even though a version of the Blue Beetle is actually public domain, from what I understand. So
Right. But yeah, I mean it's just that thing, like, it's good luck getting that on the search engine,
yeah,
getting
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
Are you familiar? You're familiar with Gustave Doré?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's like way up there. I mean, that's like one of my favorite illustrators of all time. You couldn't tell it by how I draw, but I mean, like, wow. I mean, that's like everything that I love. It's like fine art, it's illustration, and it has that comic book storytelling to it. I mean, my
Yeah.
gosh,
And
that's
it's
phenomenal.
got that virtuoso technique, there was a period when I really tried to make a Photoshop filter that could create that line work that he does, where you know how he does everything on a sometimes he'll do like horizontal line, but the thick and thins
Mhm.
will define the shape, and you're like, how does he do that?
And there were etchings, right? I mean, what wasn't that what he was doing? He was doing
I
etchings.
think so, yeah, I think
Goodness,
so.
my, that's what was so great about his stuff is it's accessible because it was prints. It was made to be printed, and that's
Mhm.
so cool.
Right.
Yeah, when I went to Paris, I was his stuff at that time at least was in Musée d'Orsay, and I was so excited. And I went there and I was looking. Where is it? And I went to the curator and like, oh yeah, that's in storage. We don't have those out. Oh, I
Oh,
would love
man.
to see his work, up close. So yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean,
Mm.
in a way, what we do, not to put too fine a point on it, is a derivative of that, right? Like that, the Japanese woodblock print making kind of stuff. I mean, we're that in the modern era, we're that kind of creature, what we do in comic books and illustration, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally, in the sense of that we're working as, the art that we do, the images that we create are part of a means to an end,
Mhm.
right? So, like, this is an original piece that I just wanna get my brush a little bit wet so it doesn't get all dry and crusty,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So I'm talking with you, but please don't mind me
No, no, no.
looking away.
It's like we're hanging out in the studio together. We
Exactly.
technically are.
Yes. Which
Yeah.
is a whole other topic of conversation that's been going on today about, like, what it means to be able to do this sort of thing, right?
Definitely.
But yeah, but to the point that you were making, right? Like, this is an illustration, and this when it's done, it could be a finished piece, It could be something that I sell, something I give away, I don't know. But it's also serving the purpose of being part of the future cover for Tiger's Tail,
Hmm.
right? And so it's kind of functioning on two levels, right? It's already functioning on multiple levels, right? And so if I was to play those games where I wanted to like let's say I wanted to make these tiger stripes actually say something, like what if there were Chinese
Oh
characters
yeah.
saying something? That's something that's been like, why didn't I think of that 20 years ago?